Yo, welcome back to another edition of the Men Who Cry podcast. Like, subscribe, review, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend. If you do not believe these things, I have to assume that you are obsessed with these pumpkin spice lattes coming back in the season. On today's episode, we are packed with a lot of good information. We will be going with our number 9 butterfly moment of the last 25 seasons. We'll be breaking that down for you guys. We will be talking about the race bowl of race bowls every year that we get with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, with the Ravens going against the Buffalo Bills. Before we're going to get into that, we're going to go back into what we were supposed to talk about last week. Last week, we were supposed to be talking about this Kawhi Leonard story. Yes, Pablo Torre, who Pablo Torre finds out, podcast host, Harvard graduate, broke this story that, again, none of this could confirm, but allegedly the Los Angeles Clippers have been trying to circumvent the salary cap in order to give Kawhi Leonard more money through what essentially feels like a shell company, okay? I recommend go watching Pablo's story, even the little clip out if you want to get more information on it. But that seems to be the way that it's gone through. Now, Steve Ballmer and the Clippers have obviously denied it. Steve Ballmer just did an interview with Ramona Shelbert of ESPN, refuting everything that's happened about the story. And of course, the one guy that we all like to hear from is Kawhi. He's not talking. So the overall kind of thing about the story, number one is, again, I think the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway, the reason why this podcast definitely loves these types of stories is bringing journalism, big J journalism, back into the fold. It's very interesting now that a lot of the stories that we get, the breaking stories that we get in sports nowadays, don't come from places like ESPN or Fox Sports, the major organizations, seemingly because, like we have said before on this podcast, those places are no longer interested in the journalism of sports. They are just trying to feed you the fat, which is the games, which is what we all love to care about. And the reason why the story is so fascinating is because, number one is, the Clippers, it just don't matter who their owner is. It don't matter who it is. They somehow find out to still be the Clippers, okay? You already basically did everything that happened to get this dude. This is probably the biggest free agent the Clippers have ever gotten, because they traded for Chris Paul. And there's no other free agent that even comes to mind that even comes close to the level of player that Kawhi Leonard. Even if they got Chris Paul in free agency, he's, all due respect to Chris Paul, he's not as good a player as Kawhi Leonard. And they've done absolutely nothing with his time here. They've won conference finals appearance that he helped them get there in terms of he helped them in the playoffs in the Utah series, but ultimately he didn't play in that West Conference Finals because of his knee injury. And they've missed the playoffs a bunch of times. They've been out in the first round a bunch of times. Like, this has been one of the worst transactions that I think any franchise has gone through, because there's nothing that came along with it. Honestly, the Kawhi Leonard situation, not all that one-to-one per se, but it very much feels like, and it's very ironic because this player just got inducted to the Hall of Fame, it very much seems like it's the Carmelo Anthony situation with New York. If you go back and remember, those Knicks teams, when he first got there, they lost in round 1. They came back the next year, they lost in round 1 again to the Miami Heat. Then the third season, they put it all together. They were the 2 seed, but they still lost in the second round. They never made the playoffs again with Carmelo in their history. And while the Clippers had a arguable better run, they got one more round further, the situation has been the same. They've had times where they missed the playoffs. They've had times where they were out in round 1, and it's just never came together for this team. And the messaging of it and how Kawhi Leonard's kind of been framing of it is he's just never been the guy who's been stand forward in front of your guy to be the leader of your locker room. And while I think it is very important to have talented basketball players, it is even more important to have leaders on your team. And when your best player just is not a leader or doesn't care to be a leader, he just, I go out there and I ball, it reflects in the rest of the locker room. And the story of Kawhi Leonard in LA and this story on top of it is a microcosm of his season or of his career in the Los Angeles Clippers uniform. Most of it ain't got nothing to do with basketball, you know? It's just a lot of failure. It's a lot of hype of stuff that doesn't actually come through. If you listen to the Zach Lowe podcast, Zach was talking with Kurt Goldsberry about potential punishments that comes through. And this is going to be kind of the interesting part of what actually comes down with this. I think you can make a clear case. While there isn't necessarily what people want to say the smoking gun about this, it very much seems Kawhi Leonard got paid under the table. Now, is that a violation because he didn't do any work, or was this through a shell company? That's the part that's going to be kind of hard to determine, right? Because I think one thing people have to understand is while the NBA is a powerful organization, they're not the cops, okay? They're not the FBI. They can, maybe hire like private investigators, maybe ex-FBI guys, give them a little money, do a little bit of digging. But ultimately, this is a private organization, right? There's only but so many they can do. They cannot require subpoenas, right? They're not about to go and get people to testify in court. They basically have to take the Pablo Torre reporting, which is all public information. This isn't Pablo kind of just put these pieces together, and obviously he got some of the people, the sources, to talk on the record about this. But they have to essentially take what Pablo did, maybe do a little bit more digging around, ask some more questions, and come to a conclusion. You can argue that, if it's this serious, you can argue that they should lose a lot of draft picks and suspend Kawhi. This is one of those things where if they kind of let it sweep by, again, what's stopping I don't remember the guy's name, but we all know the money man in LA from doing the same thing. The guy who runs the Dodgers, who just bought the Lakers. What's stopping James Dolan from doing this? What's stopping from other owners with deeper pockets from doing all of this overall? And that to me is the far end of this. The other side can just be like, yo, he didn't show up to his stuff, and this is like the business was bad. Do you really ding Kawhi for essentially not doing something that's essentially you can consider off the court, right? Because the meaning of Ballmer introducing Kawhi to this company, that's fine. That's happened a bunch of different times. Owners have done that in the past with a lot of different players. I'm borrowing from what Zach Lowe said, but BioFreeze, the company that used to represent the Blazers, I don't know if they're still their sponsor or their sponsor for their logos. I think they switched over to StockX. Damian Lillard has his own endorsement deal with them. We can see where the meetings came together. So that part of it's not going to be that part's not the problem. It's just, can they prove that Kawhi knowingly was getting the money from Ballmer through a different kind of way? So we'll see how this goes. My expectation is that it will be somewhere in the middle where I can see them losing draft picks, maybe a first round picks, maybe several second round picks. And I think Kawhi will get a suspension because there's absolutely no way that all of this happened and Kawhi just do nothing about this. And this is all circumstantial evidence, and I think that most of the main point of why this will be done is that the owners are pretty pissed. From everything that it seems to be reported, that a lot of owners and general managers, or governors as they are called, are pretty upset with what has transpired in this deal. So right before the football season started, or now we're right in the football season, the NBA just comes out there brown nosing, kind of getting it going like that, going through. But speaking of the football, a lot of great games, too many for us to cover on this one pod. We'll be doing a little bit more of that later in the podcast, or later actually in the week. But for you guys to get this going, we had our classic rivalry, right? What we used to call, I would say, the compilation bowl, the Browns medal, right? Who was the team that got the opportunity to lose to the Chiefs? That was kind of what this was going to be, the Little Brother Bowl. And we'll talk about the Chiefs a little bit, maybe not directly about their game against the Chargers, but this was a fantastic game that should have been a blowout that turned out to be a classic game between the Ravens and the Bills. The Bills come out victorious 41-40 over the Ravens. This is one of those games where we will remember back maybe come December and January of how did the Bills have home field advantage throughout the playoffs? This is one of those games that you have to point to as a reason why, right? And I want to talk about the Bills first because I think a lot of times we talk about the negative a lot and it kind of drowns out the positive of this. This dude, Josh Allen, is playing like one of the best quarterbacks of all time. Listen, I said this to my friends in some text messages. If you watch Sinners and that man had that confidence to know what his future wife was saying in that movie, you know that's a bad guy, because I already know what was said on that field. And I know that thing wasn't pleasant for him to experience, and he still went out there and balled on y'all. So that just shows me he's that type of guy. Great win for the Bills. Great win for Allen. It's also a testament to the fact that Buffalo's ability to kind of stay in games and knowing that because you have a guy like Josh Allen, you're always going to be in the game and always in the moment. And the push for him to potentially get his second MVP, you couldn't have started off better, right? You beat the guy who finished second to you in MVP. You had a better game overall, even though Lamar did not play bad at all in this game. But played one of your best games, played well when it mattered the most for you to play well, and came out with a huge victory over one of your rivals in this league. The downside is that the defense was pretty bad, and the last 3 times essentially that the Bills have played the Ravens, while the last game they played was in the playoffs and they were able to pick off Josh Allen twice, were able to pick off Lamar Jackson twice. Lamar got whatever he wanted in all 3 games. Even the game that Derrick Henry ran wild on them on the regular season last year, they weren't able to stop him. And that's going to be interesting to see going forward is that just going to be their game plan this is the part where we transition into what the Ravens just do is this team looks like chokers. Okay. Bill Simmons, he said it last year, or I think he either said it last year or he said it early enough in the offseason where he's comparing this Ravens run with Lamar to what Harden was going through with the Rockets, where they hit a bunch of threes, and all of a sudden 3 stopped and they had no kind of gear to shift to. The reason why I understand why that's a point, but I think it's different, is the gear you're supposed to shift to is the thing that you do the best, right? Most of the times when teams blow these leads, right? What happens oftentimes, right? They're throwing the ball too much, you're throwing the ball so much, and they can't run the ball, right? Because you can't run the ball, you can't sustain the drive. They ran for almost 200 yards, over 200 yards. Okay, as a team, Derrick Henry had, I believe that's his career high in rushing yards, or one of his career highs in rushing yards. Like, he had a great game until he fumbled the ball. And Lamar, like I said before, has smoked these guys for a while now. And this isn't as if Lamar hasn't met the moment, or in big games he doesn't play well, or these primetime games. That used to be a thing with him early on, that these primetime games, these Thursday night games or something like that used to be a thing. And then now it's not really a case for him anymore because they cannot stop him. The team overall just seems to, for whatever reason, just choke at the end of the game time and time again. And that falls on the coach. And, we had this discussion with Mike Tomlin last year where while you're winning a bunch of games and you're in it the whole time, there just comes to a point where it's just over. And it's a weird thing in sports where the thing that you want to do the most is win. But when the winning kind of has peaked, you want to bring in someone guy that can honestly take you to either that new level or make you reset everything, right? I do not think John Harbaugh is a bad coach. I think it's pretty clear that John Harbaugh will go into the Hall of Fame. If they do not win the Super Bowl this year, this is the firing season. Him and McDermott are gone. One of the two. Because I cannot see a scenario, maybe if Lamar or Allen don't play in the game, where those guys are back if they don't make the Super Bowl. Maybe it's an instant classic. It was this dude had the ball last, he just made the play. That's it. And they'll bring him back thinking, okay, that's a one-time experience. But how many heartbreaks are both of these franchises going to deal with, right? It's like a ring around the rosy with these guys. So it has now become to a point, and again, this is Lamar in year 8, right? He's not a quarterback that is going to play for double the amount of time. He's not going to have a 16-year career, right? And if he does, the last 3 or 4, he either won't be as good or he might even just be like a backup at that point. You only got but so much time with this guy of the way he plays, even though he doesn't really take a lot of hits. He needs to get to his Super Bowl quick, fast, in a hurry. And if the Ravens, especially John Harbaugh, are not able to put him in a situation where he's able to do so, this is not the time for him to be around the organization anymore. And it has to be something that he has to move on from. And their mindset of their like blockade, essentially, of them not be able to come through when they need to come through for these guys is just going to be an absolute issue for them moving forward. But speaking of their blockade, mostly just being the Chiefs, we will talk about their game just for a little bit because it'll be a nice little transition to the last little part of our pod. They played on Friday in a game that I thought they had not a 0 chance of losing, but like maybe a less than 2% chance of losing that game. The Chiefs fell 27-21 rather, to their division rivals, the Los Angeles Chargers, where I actually think they had more fans in the building than they actually do in their home arena. I'm not even kidding you. Justin Herbert played great. Patrick Mahomes played okay. And the thing about this Chiefs is, and the thing overall about their franchises, it's funny. I said this. I don't know if I said this on the spot, but I went on vacation last week, and I was out with a friend, and I'd never been to the casino before. Right, went to the Hard Rock Casino, in Tampa, somewhere in Central Florida, and he was winning. Like he was making money, and it explained to me the roulette table. I don't gamble. I know how to do some stuff, but I just don't do it. Right, it's not my thing. He was explaining to me how like you can be on black, but you can also like move the number, or you can move your die on like certain spots, right? There was a guy next to him that hit, because I think it hit exactly on, I think he had like 25 or something like that. Hit exactly on 25, got a big pot of the money. But the reason why he was explaining to me how this works, and I was like, well, what's your strategy? He's like, listen, bro, I stay on whatever color he picks, and I stay there, and I not only double down, I triple down, I quadruple down. He stays with it, and he doesn't do it because he knows the moment I move over, it's gonna be wrapped, right? It's gonna flip back the other way. This is simply how percentages work. I say all that to say is because the idea that the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl, or at least get back to Super Bowl again, is that kind of doubling down, right? It makes the most sense in the world to stay where your bread is buttered, right? They still have a good defense. They still have Patrick Mahomes, who's one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the league. You're not going to get me to flip on this dude until I see him lose in the postseason. And I mean lose in a way of like he's got the ball chance to win and he doesn't come through. Not in, they get the ass kicked. Because pretty much the last times he's lost in the postseason, he lost once close to Burrow, and he got blown out twice. But with all that said, there is like such little faith I think I overall have in their ability to just play any other style of we keep it close, the defense makes a play, and Lamar and Patrick Mahomes wins it for us in the end. Because that's basically been the team that they've been for like a year plus now. And it's so weird because they have a quarterback who I still think is the best in the game. Like, If I'm picking any one of these dudes, I'm picking him. And yet, I don't know if his team can score like 30 points in a game. And I think a lot of times the Brady and Mahomes comparisons are just going to keep coming through, right? Because he's chasing ghosts, right? He's not necessarily playing on the same level as Lamar or Josh or Burrow or Stafford or any of these guys. He's elevated to a point where he has now compared himself to players who aren't even playing in the league anymore. And I think the issue with him, or the constant pressure that he's going to be under, is finding a way to go back to being the guy that we all saw him to be, right? Because the Brady comparison is, okay, he won a lot early, but then Brady went a decade without winning. Then he turned it around and then won a bunch more, went Tampa, won a bunch more. The thing is that when he was in that drought, Brady, those were his best seasons. He won his MVPs in there. He got his All-Pros during that time. He threw for a ton of yards all the years, except for the year that he obviously tore his ACL and got his knee blown out in. But that's when he proved that he was not being carried, right? He was one of the leaders of the team. Well, no one thinks that Lamar or Patrick Mahomes is being carried by his team, because we saw his first half be so dominant. That's when he won his MVPs. He was still winning the Super Bowl with it. So now it's just this odd change in the fact that the team just seems to not be able to do the thing that he seems so dominant in. And it's very weird and frustrating at times, especially someone who had Isaiah Pacheco on their fantasy team and didn't do nothing with him. But the point overall is the Chiefs are always going to be graded at a level of they cannot lose a game. If they lose a game, it is one of the worst things in the world, and the window just seems more and more open for another team to win. This year, like I told y'all, I have the Ravens getting to the Super Bowl, and I have the Ravens winning the Super Bowl. But this is me going against betting on black every single time. This seems to be the time that it has to come through, right? Now, it's September. We're not going to project all the way out to January. That's 4 or 5 months from now. But this is not the Chiefs that seem to just constantly find a way to win, and that's kind of their whole thing. Especially big game for them next week against the Eagles, the defending champs. Okay, speaking of the Chiefs, right? We have to do our butterfly effect moments of the last 25 years, right? We haven't done this one in a while, but the butterfly moments are the moments where things could have went one way or the other and completely shifted the overall projection of a team going forward. Okay. So number 9 for us on the list for the top 25 moments of the last 25 years, we have the aforementioned Patrick Mahomes getting drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay. Patrick Mahomes, if you do not remember, was the second quarterback drafted in his class. He was actually the 10th overall pick. I will go through the top 10 of this list of what is a pretty good draft. It's a decent draft, at least of the first round picks. There are guys that are Hall of Famers in this. TJ Watt was the 30th pick in the draft. He's going to the Hall of Fame. Marshawn Lattimore, maybe not a Hall of Famer, but was picked right after Patrick Mahomes. Man, you sometimes wonder about those. Christian McCaffrey was in this draft. Stays healthy, he's going to go to the Hall of Fame. But the top 10 or the top 9 picks before this were Cleveland. Cleveland taking Myles Garrett with the number 1 pick. And Bomani Jones has said this before, so I'm stealing from his line. This is very much like the 1984 draft where Hakeem Olajuwon was the number 1 pick, but Michael Jordan happened to be in this draft as well. So it's no fault. The Cleveland Browns, Myles Garrett's going to Hall of Fame. First ballot, right? No questions asked. He's one of the best, if not the best, pass rusher of his generation. This guy's been an absolute dominant player for a very, very, very long time. Then you have Mr. Trubisky by the Bears. Woof. Solomon Thomas by the San Francisco 49ers. Woof. Leonard Fournette, who I thought was going to be balling in the NFL. Not a bust, but didn't live up to probably the expectations Corey Davis, bust. Jamal Adams, decent, got hurt. Mike Williams, good, kind of got hurt. Christian McCaffrey, we already mentioned. John Ross, an elite speed guy, bust. And then Patrick Mahomes at number 10. For what it's worth, Deshaun Watson, who I also thought was going to be a great player, went 12th in that draft. So the reason why, obviously, this is one of the crucial moments, one of the moments, it's pretty nondescript, changed the Chiefs franchise. I know, people don't remember, but the Chiefs were winning a lot of games before. They had Alex Smith. They were in the playoffs every single year. They just got Andy Reid on the team, but I believe this is the year they lost to the Steelers when they didn't score a touchdown. Yes, I think I'll rephrase that. The Chiefs scored 2 touchdowns. The Steelers scored 0 touchdowns, and the Chiefs lost that game at home. And that was Alex Smith's last playoff game, I think, ever in his career. But Patrick Mahomes came in, and the rest is kind of history. You got 2 MVPs, 3-time Super Bowl champion, 5 Super Bowl appearances. And now Kansas City their franchise has to be valued at one of the most valuable franchises, not only the NFL, it's probably in the United States. And what would have happened if he either went one spot too late, one spot too early? I think the difference is too is that Mahomes, not necessarily that he had less expectations per se, but there's just a difference in. There's very much belief that this guy was kind of a project. Like, he wasn't going to play a lot. Like, him and Josh Allen's kind of storylines together are very similar in the sense that I don't think a lot of people knew what they were getting with this guy. He did play at a major college. He played at Texas Tech. But even at Texas Tech, he was not looked upon as this like, oh, this guy's going to be the new all-time great quarterback in the league. He was kind of like, all right, this guy's kind of wild and erratic, but he's got some tools, and let's see if he can develop and really move on. So number 9 on the list, Patrick Mahomes getting drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs and completely revolutionizing this franchise and going on to being one of the best quarterbacks of all time, because that's what he is already. Okay. Thank you guys for listening to the Men Who Cry podcast. Like I said, like, subscribe, review, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend. I'll be back with you guys again on another pod for later this week. All right, y'all. Peace out. Have a good rest of your day.